welcome back to the deep dive. Usually we start these sessions by trying to ground ourselves.
Right. Establish the foundation.
Exactly. The who, the what, the where.
Right.
We like to build a nice solid base before we, start jumping off into the really esoteric stuff. But looking at the documents we have on the desk today, I think grounding might be the wrong word entirely.
That is a fair warning, I think.
In fact, if we do our job right over the next hour or so, the very ground beneath your feet might feel, well, a little less solid than it did when you hit play.
It might, yeah. We are dealing with material today that explicitly challenges the structural integrity of what we all call reality. This isn't just about ghost stories or spooky coincidences. This goes deeper. It's about the physics, or I guess the metaphysics, of the actual chair you're sitting in right now.
We are indeed. So we invite you to pull up a chair, assuming, of course, that the chair actually exists, which is apparently up for debate.
It is.
To discuss session 137 of the Early Sessions, Book 3 of the Seth material.
And for anyone who's new to this, or even for people who followed Seth for years, this particular session it's a heavyweight.
Oh, it's a monster.
It's dense, it's very technical, and it is, I would argue, one of the most foundational sessions for really understanding how Seth views the physical universe.
Absolutely. But before we get into the really heavy lifting, let's set the scene a little. We have to travel back to March 3rd, 1965.
Context is always so key with these sessions. The notes from Rob Butts, Jane's husband, describe the setting. They're in the bedroom of their apartment in Elmira, New York.
Right.
It's a Wednesday night. Doors are closed. And he makes a specific note that the room was unusually quiet.
Yeah, that detail really stuck out to me, too. He called it a heavy, expectant silence. It almost feels like the atmosphere itself was, bracing for what was about to come through.
And Jane's delivery, her voice, it wasn't the usual fast-paced Seth. It was described as slow, dissociated.
Which usually signals something, doesn't it?
It does. It usually means the information coming through is incredibly difficult to translate. That Seth, the personality speaking through Jane, is really struggling to push concepts into our physical language that just don't naturally fit.
He's trying to explain the mechanics of existence to people who are, well, trapped inside the mechanism.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a character in a video game trying to explain the source code of the console to another character, but only using the vocabulary that's available inside the game itself.
That is a very, very apt analogy.
Yeah.
And before we try to take that mechanism apart, we should probably handle the basics.
The necessary business. This deep dive, like all of them, is distributed completely free of charge on all major platforms, and it is for educational purposes.
Absolutely. And we have to give credit where it's due. This material comes from the New Awareness Network. They're the publisher of these incredible sessions.
A phenomenal resource.
So if you want to follow along or just dig deeper, and trust me, you are going to want you can find the books and so much more at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
So what is our mission for today? Where are we headed with this?
Our mission is to explore Seth's completely mind-bending definitions of identity. We're going to look at the illusion of matter, the true nature of what he calls action. And here's a kicker. We're going to try and find out why a thought literally changes the moment you think it, and why your dreams might actually be more electrically real than a lightning bolt.
It's a complete inversion of how we typically see the world, isn't it?
Totally.
Think of the physical world as the hard, fast reality, and, thoughts or dreams are these wispy, secondary, unimportant things. Seth just flips that entire table over.
Speaking of tables, let's talk about chairs. That's really the first segment of our dive today, the chair paradox, or as I've started calling it, the chair that isn't there.
It's such a fascinating place to start because he takes something so mundane, so everyday piece of furniture, and just uses it to dismantle our entire understanding of perception?
He does. He starts by making this distinction between what he calls the ideal and the symbol. Now, this sounds a little bit like Plato, right? The world of forms.
It echoes it, for sure. Seth basically posits that any materialization, anything physical we see, is, in essence, a mediation.
A middle ground.
Exactly, a middle ground. On one side, you have the ideal, which is the non-material concept, the pure energy pattern or idea of the thing. And then on the other side, you have the practical, working, perceivable symbol.
Which is the matter we can touch and see.
That's the stuff we call matter.
So the chair isn't the idea of the chair. It's more like a camouflage costume that the idea is wearing so that our senses can pick it out.
That is a very, very good way to put it. We don't
Okay.
see the actual idea, we see a construction. But this is where it gets really technical and where Seth really departs from simple philosophy.
Go on.
He says that each individual creates any given material object through the use of their own inner senses.
Okay, let's pause on that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy to gloss over that as just a metaphor, you know?
Mhm.
Oh, I create my own reality. Sure, I have a positive attitude.
Right.
But Seth is being dead literal here. He's talking about atoms and molecules.
He is being completely literal.
Yeah?
He argues that when you look at a chair, you are not passively receiving light rays that are bouncing off some pre-existing static object that's just sitting there waiting for you.
So what am I doing?
You are actively, if subconsciously, using your own atomic and psychic energy to construct a representation of that chair.
So my brain, or my inner self, I guess,
Yeah.
is essentially 3D printing a chair in real time every single millisecond, just so that I can perceive it.
Subconsciously, yes. You're using your own energy to create a representation that matches the agreed-upon data. So the chair I see is constructed by me. The chair you see.
Is constructed by me.
Exactly.
Wow, okay, that solves the subjectivity paradox, doesn't
Yeah.
it? If I am building my version of the chair and you are building your version.
Then we are strictly alone in our perception. Seth says, and I'm quoting here, he sees or perceives only his own construction. And then he points out the humor in this, or the impossibility. He says, the chair created then by any given individual and perceived by him is an identity in that it exists at any given time without any exact duplication.
Without exact duplication. So duplication is technically impossible.
It is, because for an exact duplication to occur, you would have to use the exact same atoms and molecules at the exact same instant in time.
Which can happen.
Can happen.
Yeah.
Since I'm using my construction and you're using yours, we are, in a very real sense, looking at two completely different chairs that just happen to occupy the same space in our shared consensus reality.
That creates such a strange sense of isolation, doesn't it? I mean, it means we never technically touch the same world. We're just coordinating our private hallucinations very, very well.
Consensus reality is the term, yeah. We agree on the coordinates, but the actual construction is individual. It's kind of like we're both playing the same multiplayer video game.
Oh, I like that.
My console renders the chair on my screen. Your console renders the chair on your screen. They look the same, they act the same, but the data processing is happening locally.
Okay, my brain is already starting to hurt, and we're only, what, 10 minutes in?
Yeah.
But let's go deeper into this atomic flux, because even if I'm just looking at my version of the chair, Seth says that chair isn't even stable from one moment to the next.
No, it's not. Not at all. We think of a chair as this solid, static object. It just sits there. If I leave the room and come back, it's the same chair. But physically, we know, and even science in 1965 knew this, that matter is just energy in constant motion.
Right, you've got electrons spinning, huge empty spaces between the nucleus and the electron shell, all that.
Exactly. And Seth says, the chair is an identity, and yet at no given moment is it the same chair, for already the atoms and molecules that compose it have changed and been replaced by others.
It's a river. You know that old saying, you can't step in the same river twice.
Mm-hmm.
Seth is saying you can't even sit in the same chair twice.
Exactly. Even while you are actively sitting in it. The atoms are shifting, swapping, being replaced. The electronic reality of that chair is in constant, unbelievable flux. The stuff it's made of is completely transient.
So if the atoms are always changing and the molecules are being replaced constantly, what exactly is the chair? What gives it its identity if all the parts are always new?
That is the core question, isn't it? And Seth defines identity here not as a static collection of stuff, but as a pattern. It's something that exists at a given time without exact duplication. The identity is the pattern, the cohesion, the intent behind it. But the material that makes up that identity is fleeting.
It's kind of like a sports team.
How so?
Well, the roster changes every few years.
Right.
Players retire, new ones get drafted. Eventually, none of the original players are even there anymore. But it's still the New York Yankees or whoever.
That's a perfect analogy.
The identity persists, but the matter, the players on the field, has been completely swapped out.
That is it, exactly. The idea of the team remains. The symbol, the actual lineup on the field, is constantly fluctuating. And to take it back to Seth's point, if you and I go to the same game, I'm perceiving my version of the team and you're perceiving yours.
It makes reality feel so personal.
Yeah.
Like I'm just living in my own custom-built universe that just happens to agree with your custom-built universe most of the time.
It implies we are all much more powerful creators than we ever give ourselves credit for. We aren't just observing a world, we're building it.
Okay, so if physical objects are these weird, fluctuating personal constructions, surely thoughts are more direct. Like if I think of a pink elephant and I tell you about it, boom, you have the thought. Simple.
You would think so. We tend to see communication, especially something like telepathy, as a direct line, like a fax machine or an email. You hit send, the exact same file arrives in my inbox.
Right. Sender A sends a thought to receiver B, easy.
Seth says, not so fast. This brings us right into our second segment, telepathy and the what he calls the corruption of thought.
Corruption sounds harsh.
Maybe corruption is a harsh word. Let's call it the transformation of thought.
I like that better. So in this session, he uses this exact example, right? Sender A and receiver B. And he breaks down the mechanics of what happens when we try to send a thought. And it's not like moving a box from one room to another.
Not at all. Seth states this very clearly. He says, our imaginary sender A does not transmit a given thought. He does not even send an exact duplicate.
Wait. He doesn't even send a duplicate. So what on earth is getting sent?
Energy. Action. And this is a really crucial point. The very act of sending the thought changes the structure of that thought. You cannot separate the data from the transmission method.
That's actually very similar to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in physics, isn't it?
It's remarkably similar.
The act of measuring something, or in this case, moving something, changes the thing itself.
Precisely. Seth says action, the very action of transmission, alters the nature, the electrical reality of the thought itself.
Can't we? Can we visualize this somehow?
Yeah. Okay, think of the original thought as a fragile, soft clay sculpture. It's malleable. Now, to throw it to you, I have to grab it, right?
Right.
The pressure of my hand changes its shape. The friction of the air as it flies to you changes its shape. By the time it even gets to you, it is not the same shape I held in my hand.
And then receiver B still has to catch it.
Correct. And the act of catching it, of receiving it, also exerts force. So receiver B gets this distorted impulse of energy and has to then reconstruct a new thought that matches the signal as closely as possible.
So telepathy isn't really reading minds. It's more like interpreting signals.
It is a constant act of reconstruction. Seth says B can't receive the thought in its present condition. So receiver B has to construct a facsimile.
This explains so much about just normal human miscommunication. Even on a psychic level, we're all just making our best guess about what the other person actually means.
It implies that all communication is always an act of reconstruction. We never truly share a thought in the sense of possessing the exact same electrical unit.
We just share approximation.
We share approximations, we spark new thoughts in each other that hopefully resonate with the original.
That's actually kind of beautiful and also a little lonely. It means we're always kind of trapped in our own interpretation of things.
Or you could see it as we are all constantly creators. You aren't just a passive bucket receiving information from me. You are actively building your reality and your understanding of what I'm saying moment by moment.
Communication is a game of constant reconstruction. I like that. It explains why myth understandings are so common. It's a miracle we understand each other at all.
It really is. And the culprit, or maybe the catalyst for all of this constant change, is what Seth simply calls action.
Right. Okay, segment 3. This is a big one. What is action? Because when I hear the word action, I think of Hollywood. I think of explosions, car chases.
Running for a bus.
Yeah, at least running for a bus. But that's not what he means.
No, he's very careful to distinguish between what we call motion and what he calls action.
Okay, so what's the difference? Because in English, they seem pretty much synonymous.
Seth defines action as, and this is wild, a dimension of existence.
A dimension, like height, width, and depth.
Similar, but even more fundamental. He says, action is a dimension arising out of existence. It allows for change. And he clarifies that action is not a force that acts upon things from the outside.
It's inherent. It's inside.
Exactly. It's inside.
So it's not me pushing the chair. It's the chairs.
Yeah.
Its own inner vitality.
It's inner vitality. That's the exact term he uses. Seth says, action is more like growth than force.
Ooh, I like that. More like growth than force. That's a good distinction.
Think about a tree. A tree growing isn't moving its location, right? It's not running down the street. But there is a tremendous amount of action happening. Cells are dividing, sap is rising, leaves are unfurling. It's an expression of its own inner vitality.
So action is just the universe constantly trying to express itself.
Yes. Seth calls it the spontaneous nature of the inner vitality toward various expressive materializations. It's the drive of the unmanifest to become manifest. It's the universe's urge to be.
And this all ties back to the electrical reality you mentioned, right? Because Seth makes a point of saying that scientists in 1965, and let's be honest, probably still today, have a very limited view of action
A very limited view.
because they're only looking for physical, measurable movement.
Correct. He critiques the scientific view of his time, saying they only perceive the obvious forms of electrical action, the things they can measure with voltmeters and oscilloscopes. But they miss the inner action that powers the whole system.
They see the lightning, but they miss the storm's intent, so to speak.
That's a great way to say it. Which leads to one of my absolute favorite quotes from this entire session. I think you know the one.
I do. I want to read this verbatim because it's just so cool. A dream is as valid an electrical reality as a lightning bolt, the difference being that the lightning bolt projects itself into your awareness through the outer senses.
It's such a powerful statement. It completely challenges our hierarchy of what's real and what's not.
Right. We're taught that the lightning bolt is real because it can burn your house down. The dream is not real because it's just, in your head.
But Seth argues they're both composed of the same fundamental stuff: electrical intensity. Action. The lightning bolt is just action that has successfully projected itself into our physical camouflage system. The dream is action that has remained free of it.
But in terms of pure energy,
They're equal.
so purely from an energy standpoint, the firing of neurons and the interaction that creates a nightmare or a blissful flying dream is just as significant an event as a physical weather phenomenon.
Electrically, yes. And maybe, he suggests, even more significant because the dream action is less hampered
Hampered by what?
by the ego and by time.
Ah, the ego. The fun police of the universe.
In a way, yeah. Which leads us perfectly into segment 4, the illusion of time and the freedom of dreams.
So how does the ego mess up our perception of all of this action?
Well, Seth's argument is that all action is actually simultaneous. It happens in what he calls the spacious present.
Everything happening at once.
Everything, all at once. But our ego, our conscious self, can't handle that. It would be completely overwhelming. So the ego tries to control action by standing apart from it. It slows down our perception.
It hits the brakes.
It puts the brakes on hard. It chops action into little digestible bits, past, present, future, frame by frame by frame. Seth says, by slowing down his perception of action, man imagines that he lengthens time.
So time is just us squinting at reality.
Time is us watching a movie in slow motion because we can't process the fire hose of data at full speed. We create the illusion of linear time just to manage the flow of action. If we took the brakes off, we would experience everything simultaneously.
That sounds incredibly intense.
It would be for a consciousness that's not trained for it, but in dreams.
In dreams, the ego lets its guard down. It stops pumping the brakes.
Exactly. Seth says, in dreams, action is given more freedom and allowed to flow in a less hampered fashion. Spanx doesn't exist physically in a dream, yet we experience distance. We can experience what he calls action within action.
Action within action. That sounds like the movie Inception.
It is remarkably similar. In the dream state, you are experiencing the raw electrical reality of action without the heavy, slow camouflage of physical matter and linear time. You're closer to the raw feed of the universe.
That explains why dreams can feel so visceral. You wake up and your heart is pounding, you're crying or laughing out loud. The action was real, even to the matter wasn't.
The electrical event occurred. Your body reacted to the electrical reality of the dream, not your physical surroundings. And this has huge implications for everything.
Like what?
Well, Seth points out that our physical body's existence is determined by this constant unseen action. Even when we're not consciously aware of it, our bodies are constantly performing this action of renewal, of growth, of atomic exchange. If that action were to stop,
We'd just pause.
we would disintegrate because identity is action. The process is the thing.
Which brings us to what is, for me, the most chilling and also the most profound part of this entire session. Segment 5, the termination of identity.
This is where the philosophy gets really, really deep. Seth presents us with this core paradox. He says, action tampers with identity, yet were it not for action, identity would be impossible.
Okay, let's unpack that. Action tampers with identity. That means change. It messes up who you are.
If you define who you are as a single static snapshot, then yes, if I take a photo of you, that's you in that one moment. The second you move, The photo is no longer accurate. Action has tampered with that static image of you.
But then the second part, were it not for action, identity would be impossible.
Because without that movement, without growth, without the constant flow of energy and what we call time, you wouldn't be anything. You'd just be a frozen nothingness.
So to exist at all, I have to constantly change.
You have to. And this is where he draws the chilling conclusion. He says, to remain an identity must completely renew itself, and each renewal is indeed a termination.
Each renewal is a termination. That sounds like death.
It is a form of death, a micro-death every instant. The you of 1 second ago must die. It must be terminated, so that the you of this second can be born.
That's heavy. It brings to mind the old ship of Theseus paradox, right? If you replace every single plank in a ship, is it still the same ship? Seth seems to be saying, no, it is not the same ship. But the process of constantly changing the planks is the only thing that keeps it floating.
Precisely. He says, yet without the termination, no new action on the part of the identity would be possible. If you didn't end the previous moment, you couldn't enter the next one. You'd be stuck, trapped in a feedback loop.
So we're all these perpetual phoenixes, just constantly rising from the ashes of ourselves, every single microsecond.
And this applies to everything. To you, to the chair, to the atom, to the entire galaxy. It's all a constant, unending cycle of termination and renewal. It is, as he calls it, the breath of inner vitality.
The breath of inner vitality. Okay, that sounds a lot nicer than constant death.
It balances the chilling aspect with a sense of purpose, I think. It represents that relationship between the unexpressed energy trying to get out and the materialized form that it takes. It's the tension of trying to become real.
It's the tension of life. We are always trying to be. We never just are. We are always in a state of becoming.
Precisely. We are verbs, not nouns.
Whoa, we are verbs, not nouns. That's going in my notebook.
I'll make a note of that as well. It really does sum up this whole philosophy of action perfectly.
So let's try and zoom out a bit. We've covered a massive amount of ground here.
We really have.
We started with the chair paradox. This idea that the physical world is really a camouflage construction built by our own subconscious atom by atom.
And that no two people ever see the exact same world because we're all running our own custom simulations.
Then we looked at telepathy and the transformation of thought. The idea of communication is really a game of reconstruction, like a cosmic game of telephone, where the message is reshaped by the very act of sending it.
Then we redefined action. It's not just movement, it's a dimension, it's growth. It's the universe's inner vitality pushing outward.
And we learned that electrically, a dream is just as real as a lightning bolt, maybe even more so, because it's unfiltered by our physical senses.
And finally, we had to face the termination of identity. The realization that to exist, we must change, and to change, we must constantly end what we were. It's the ultimate price of existence.
It really makes you look at the world differently. I mean, the next time I sit in a chair, I'm going to have a new appreciation for the hard work my subconscious is doing just to keep me from falling on the floor.
It's a lot of effort just to maintain the illusion of stability.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've only scratched the surface. This is just one session.
Yeah.
Section 137 out of hundreds and hundreds. The Seth material is just vast.
We always encourage listeners to go to the source. Don't just take our word for it. These concepts are so layered, you really need to read them, sit with them, and just let them dismantle your reality at your own pace.
You can find this material in the Early Sessions Book 3. And you should absolutely visit the publisher's website. Go to sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
One more time for that.
That's sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
There's a real wealth of information there. The bookstore, the history, the context for all these sessions. It really is the hub for all things Seth.
And remember, we do this for the love of the material. This deep dive is free, it's educational, and hopefully it's a little bit mind-expanding.
Indeed.
So I want to leave you with a final thought, a little something to chew on while you go about reconstructing your reality today.
What's on your mind?
Well, we talked about how time is really just the ego slowing things down. We chop reality to these manageable bits so we don't go crazy. But if action is truly simultaneous, and if the only reason we experience things like waiting or distance is because we are actively pumping the brakes,
Yes.
what happens if you stop slowing it down? What happens if you just take your foot off the brake? Do you see everything at once? Do you become everything at once? Or does the chair just finally disappear?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? Perhaps that's what happens when we wake up from this dream of physical life.
Maybe. Or maybe the chair was never there to begin with. Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.
Stay wobbly, friends.